Okay, welcome to another episode of the Property Prescription. Today we've got Chamoun Malki. How are you, Chamoun?
Well, thanks, Phil. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Now, talk us about your role, and you've just started with us at Property for Doctors, and you come along with a lot of experience, so it'd be great to just get a bit of a take around your background and sort of some of the services that you're going to come and start looking after our doctors for their commercial requirements.
Absolutely. Thank you, Phil. Day 3 officially, so very excited to be here. Very much with big L plates on in terms of the organisation, but I feel very welcome, so credit to you and the team. I'm really attracted to the purpose that we serve here for the medical clients that we serve. As head of commercial, my role is to help all these medical professionals navigate the way through, whether it's a lease, finding the right practice or premises for them, help them with their decision making when it comes to building wealth and investments, and basically giving the advisory services along the way. You asked about experience as well, so I've had almost 30 years of institutional experience.
30 years? I thought it was 20.
I don't look that old, do I? No, it's nearing between 28 to 30, depending on where we start that clock. But thank you. Moisturizer's working. My background spans valuation in terms of the commercial sector through to development and tenant representation. I've had a lot of leasing experience as well across the sectors of office, industrial logistics, and a bit of retail. And along the way, a bit of medical as well, of course. And more latterly, it's been asset management and basically leading teams to help optimize the value of assets through really active management and a lot of acquisition and divestment experience as well.
And you see, you've got that institutional grade experience, which is great, which we want to bring to our sort of doctor client base. And you come from a family of doctors. Do you want to elaborate on that?
I do. Thanks, Phil. And yes, I'm very fortunate to be part of a very loving family. I think I'm the black sheep because most of them are smarter than I am. My eldest sister is a gastroenterologist. My brother-in-law is a GP and has his own clinic. I've got a nephew who's just graduated as a doctor, and I've got a niece who's just studying in med, her second year. So really proud of them.
Coming really well. And talk about sort of a lot of our doctors when they're looking at a lease, okay? They're dealing with a very challenging landlord. What are some of the tips that you'd probably give a doctor in terms of getting some of that advice? What are the first things they should be looking at a lease, and why should they be talking to you?
This is going by personal experience. Doctors, as we know, are very intelligent people, and they're wonderful people, serve a fantastic point for the community and obviously help all of us. Whether it's time-starved or whether it's just a different focus, I think the first part is to get advice on the lease. And this goes back to, say, the tenant representation days that I had previously, but it starts with understanding what the obligations are, both on the lessor, the vendor of the property, or the tenant, which in this case would be our clients, hypothetically. There are a lot of clauses in the leases that if you're not used to a lease day to day, you just don't know what rights you have versus the lessor and what obligations both parties have. So fundamentally, it's getting advice on that document to make sure you understand it and that we're optimizing the rights under that lease.
Spot on. And I think with a lot of our medicos, looking at when they're looking to buy a medical practice or a dental clinic or any type of medical premises, there are certain rules and obligations that they need to meet in order for that to become fit for purpose. Now, do you want to talk about maybe some of the things that you've seen over the years in terms of some of these healthcare practitioners, car parking, heritage? We're seeing a lot of doctors, they love the terrace, they love the double-storey terrace in Sydney or Melbourne. But heritage issues, what are some of the issues with heritage that we're seeing in terms of practitioners going in?
I think agnostic of use, Phil, it gets back to heritage issues are a labyrinth, to say the least, and that might do with protections on the facade of the building. It might do with protections on the interior of the building and what can be done. Most heritage issues don't necessarily govern what can be done inside a premises, but in the extreme they can. I think the fundamental point is to note that there is an added layer of approval that's required where there is heritage, and that brings with it sometimes, quite often actually, an added level of cost as well. So from a budgeting perspective, from a feasibility perspective, it's really important to understand the process, both in terms of time and the likely costs that could be involved.
I think you're absolutely spot on. And a lot of the mistakes that we've seen from a lot of our medical practitioners, they've come to us and asked for our advice after they've actually secured the property.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we educate our medical client base is come and have a chat to us, and we'll actually run through that due diligence to work out whether or not that particular asset is fit for purpose for your needs.
Could not agree more with the fact that due diligence really governs where a great investment is going to be made or not.
Yeah,
It's really critical.
zoning's another big one that
Yep.
doctors have been caught on. Number of car spaces required for a medical premises as well. They've gone in and had insufficient car parking requirements. So there are a number of different hurdles that doctors need to go through. The other thing I want to touch on is federal government. We've had a lot of talk about CGT, negative gearing. Commercial investment. There's no changes to the commercial investment landscape. What are you seeing? If you're a doctor looking to buy sort of a $3 or $5 million investment out there, what would it be some of the assets you'd be looking at or advising them on?
I think the conditions right now, Phil, are fantastic, to be frank. Understand there is uncertainty out there and there might not be the volume of buyers. But if we think about the fundamentals of commercial property, and this is not an umbrella statement, we're talking about commercial property that you or I might buy with the right characteristics, right location, properly governed with some security of cash flow under the lease or an opportunity to get some rent reversion. If we look back at the market for the last 3 years, parking these changes of tax, we've gone through a cycle where cap rates really compress. So that's the yield. And obviously there's an inverse relationship with yield and val. If we go back to sort of 21, 22, that was probably the peak of the market. So we got yields down as low as 4%, 4.25%.
Unbelievable. Like for even defensive neighbourhood shopping centres, people were buying shopping centres on yields sub 4%.
Crazy. And we say crazy now because the cost of debt is higher. But of course, back then, if you looked at the cost of debt plus a little risk premium for property and other factors, you got somewhere to the region of 4 to 4.5%, let's say, for these prime defensive assets. Now, with the advent of a higher cost of debt, we've got a different sort of return characteristic. And now you're looking at the same assets that are somewhere in the order of 5.5 to probably 6.25. And so I'm really excited by some of the opportunities that are there. There are a lot of opportunities, but they're not all great opportunities.
Absolutely.
But the great opportunities are there.
But some of the stuff that we're seeing for our doctors when we're buying commercial investments, we put them under a due diligence clause.
Yep.
And it's up to us as a business to go through that due diligence, do it properly, do it well. And some of these assets are failing on due diligence. They're not necessarily going through to unconditional transactions. So I think it's really important, like if you're buying your medical practice or you need a lease reviewed or you're looking to buy a commercial investment, you get that advice.
I think it's absolutely critical. And the fact that not every property gets through DD is a reflection of the quality of the work that the team has been doing, because we actually sleep well at night treating our clients' money like it's our own money. If it's not good enough for us, it's not going to be good enough for them. So the DD process is critical, and we've got a fairly comprehensive process. I'm really pleased with what I've seen in the last 3 days in terms of how it's been done. It's fantastic.
Well, it's great to have you on board. I think, would you like to come on the podcast again over the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
Sounds like an invite I can't turn down, Phil.
What we're going to do is going to go through some doctor case studies.
Yep.
We're actually going to teach our audience and educate our audience around, we won't mention client details or property details,
Sure.
but we'll give them a bit of a case study and run through this, and it'd be great to have you on board.
Fantastic. Sounds great.
Thanks, Chamoun.
Thank you, Phil.